So picture with me, friends, you receive an invitation. Also preface, this story is adapted from a story of my friend C.B. Beal, a luminary of religious education in our tradition. You get an invitation to an ice cream sundae party. And not just any ice cream sundae party, this invitation comes with a promise that everyone is welcome. Everyone is invited. And so maybe you're feeling, okay, ice cream, okay. You show up to the ice cream sundae party. There are bowls, there are spoons, there's people, and there's only vanilla ice cream. And so you, or maybe someone else, comes to the host and says, hey, I thought this was supposed to be an ice cream sundae party. And the host says, well, it is. We have all kinds of vanilla ice cream. You got vanilla and you got vanilla bean and vanilla swirl and like quadruple, like weapons grade vanilla ice cream. Just all the vanilla ice cream you could possibly want. And then so someone else comes up to the host, maybe you, maybe someone else, and says, hey, well, do you got any vanilla ice cream that doesn't have sugar in it? The host says, ice cream without sugar, why would you eat that? Isn't that just frozen milk? Okay, and then someone else comes up to the host and says, hey, do you got any ice cream that that's on dairy, say made with coconut milk, or maybe it's made with soy milk? Oh, no, milk, ice cream has cream in it. Soy, it's a bean. Vanilla is also a bean. And so these sound pretty unreasonable, right? Like, I don't know if anyone wakes up in the morning ready to be a jerk about ice cream. But this isn't a really good welcome, is it? No. Well, let's retcon this story, right? So let's say you get that ice cream party invitation, very cool. You go to the ice cream party and exactly what you want is there. Picture with me for a second, just take a little moment. If you were to go to such an ice cream party, what would you want? What is it that you want? Maybe it's also something you need, but at least what you want. What are some things you'd expect to see, y'all? Feel free to. What was that? Turtle Sundae. I'm not sure what that is, but sure, it should belong there too. Any other hot fudge? Yes. Rocky Road. Mint chocolate chip. Yeah, hallelujah. I love it. So many things. Skillet cookie. Again. But sure. Now, that sounded more like a party, right? Right. And maybe this ice cream party doesn't just have one dairy-free option, it's got a couple. Not just one sugar-free option, there's a couple available. Y'all, maybe there's even some sugar-free, dairy-free options available. Right? Yeah. Now, that is a real ice cream party. It sounds like one where everyone could be welcome. Now consider the ice cream party is a church, a community. We can enjoy vanilla. Sure, we can enjoy vanilla. That might be all some of us like, the classical music, the NPR normative Protestant recital church with a sermon sandwiched between hymns, which we kind of do. And everyone sits down, stays seated. I can go on about something, I won't go home. Some folks might vibe with that, but based off my experience here, folks are hungry for something more. And in our services, we attempt to draw from a variety of sources, traditions, settings. We aren't perfect at this. That ain't the point. It's the effort, the intention, the attempting to make this a space, and a time for everyone. Perhaps not for everyone all of the time, but mindful of our growing edges and with humility, leaning into relationship. New ideas, new ways of knowing and being in the world, that we may better portray the depths and the breadths and the mystery of that greater love that we aim to be claimed by, that we aim to show and share with one another in the world. Now, a good friend and lay colleague who I mentioned earlier, C.B. Beal, taught just about all of our whole lives comprehensive sexuality trainings. CB is a non-binary Unitarian Universalist, founder of the Justice and Peace Consulting, a luminary for love and liberation, kindness and compassion, both in how we facilitate and shape our spaces, but also towards ourselves. And around 2016, shortly after I took on my role as a youth minister at my home congregation, I was in an OWL training with CB where they presented this idea of preemptive radical inclusion. You may have read it in the worship title as P.R.I. Oh, there it is. Yep, P.R.I, preemptive radical inclusion. I might say P.R.I. because that's a mouthful, right? Preemptive radical inclusion, this is in C.B.'s words, is a way of being, of leading and following, in turn a philosophy about creating just, loving, and creative spaces in the world. But it's more than just a philosophical approach, y'all. It's an intervention, an activity, a process, a spiritual practice. P.R.I. requires reflection and exploration. It leads us to make decisions about what our next move will be to involve everyone within those spaces where we have leadership responsibility. And that means anybody who holds responsibility, right? P.R.I. means that we challenge what we already believe, the systems that have worked for us and the ones that we enjoy, and lean into learning how other people experience those systems. Now, the practice of P.R.I. would mean we have to change. It's a sign that we are practicing preemptive radical inclusion, that we notice it is we who change. P.R.I. is a framework for liberation and justice to use when we are in positions of leadership, when we are given or have taken responsibility within a group or an organization, whether it is a formal and constant leadership of organizational leaders, or if the leadership is temporary for a particular event. Even doesn't matter how young or old we are, y'all. If we're just in a class and we are a leader, or we're on a sports team, all the ways in which we are leaders, expand that idea. Now, P.R.I. is not a box to check off in some planning process, put out a call to diversity, so check, inclusion done. Instead, this is a lifelong practice, not a thing to do, but a way to explore and perceive, a way to live and live together. It's a way of examining privilege, to take on responsibility, set aside some control that we may share in the work of shaping a community and work for a greater justice. P.R.I. lives at the intersection of trauma-aware and anti-oppression practices. It challenges leaders with enough tension to require growth and not permit avoidance or denial, while holding enough space for the complexities of leaders' histories and identities and experiences to remain attended to, but not centered. Now, it's preemptive because we, as leaders, are responsible to figure out in advance how to involve everyone in the experience or meeting or activity, and we make those changes without all attendees having to make their needs known because we have already planned for them. And I know that this congregation is capable of doing that. Now, what are some ways, we also get some ways that people, you might see this idea, might feel, experience this idea present in the congregation? Also, shoot, I just messed up. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Reverend Juniper Meadows. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a tall, curly-haired woman with a stole preaching robe and a colorful clergy collar, and that's me. Perhaps pronouns and visual descriptors are ways we can be radically inclusive. Imperfect, I just forgot it, but I remembered, right? Right. What are some other ways we might be preemptively radically inclusive here, y'all? The building, culture, gender neutral bathrooms, very nice. Yeah, absolutely. The bathrooms were relatively new when I got here, that endeavor to build them. Oh, feel free to shout it out, y'all. Handicap access, like the ramp, right? Like the ramp. Some churches had to be really pushed to install things like ramps in their spaces. That's too bad. Thankful for the ADA. But yeah, this is an example of preemptive radical inclusion, and it doesn't stop there. It is not a laundry list that we can check everything off of all at once, but it is a thing to be mindful of, to be expanding. Heck, we have gluten-free cookies back there and stuff. That's an example too, right? What we bring to the space, how we care for one another, how we care for ourselves. For P.R.I. is not just about our relationships with one another, it is also about anticipating our areas for growth. And it's radical because the experience of a space might be totally different from what you're expecting if we implement these changes. It might come alive in whole new ways. Even in the way we structure liturgy, we might do things differently someday. I'm sure you all will anticipate that with me, but that's how it ought to be, so that we can be more expansive, drawing those circles of care and compassion wider and wider still. And so this is something that we're already doing, trying to be inclusive in a broad and wide way. And again, not a simple plastic inclusion, checking off a box, but a radical inclusion that seeks not to center any one particular group at all particular times, but makes room for everyone. I reckon this is what beloved community feels like, y'all. a place where we can all truly, truly be welcome, right? We all get free together. Now, I invite you to carry with you throughout the day and think about what a church engaging in this process, this practice, spiritual practice, an ongoing one that we're never quite done with, right? What that might feel like. What are some things that we're already doing that lean into this practice, and where do we have room for growth? We all get free together, y'all. We all do, because everybody is somebody. Will you join me once more in a spirit of prayerful contemplation, friends? We know that we come into this space like a paradox, carrying a lightness and a heaviness, a love and a sorrow. May all that is our life be worthy of the name holy, sacred, worth and dignity. And may we know in our bones and what grounds our bones that we belong here, just the way we are, and in all the ways we may yet become. Amen. Blessed be. We have just a few moments for joys and sorrows. If there's one or two people who need something to share, I'll step aside for just a moment. A poem from the Reverend Dr. Tandega, whom I owe a great theological debt to. Dr. Tandega is a scholar of embodied theologies. Here's her poem, The Legacy of Caring. Despair is my private pain, born from what I have failed to say, failed to do, failed to overcome. Be still, my inner self. Let me rise to you. Let me reach down into your pain and soothe you. I turn to you to renew my life. I turn to the world, the streets of the city, the worn tapestries of brokerage firms, drug dealers, private estates, personal things in the bag lady's cart, rage and pain, and the face that turned from me, afraid of their own inner worlds. This common world I love anew, as the lifeblood of generations who refuse to surrender their humanity in an inhumane world courses through my veins. From within this world, my despair is transformed to hope, and I begin anew the legacy of caring. Let that marinate for just a second. This common world I love anew. What a challenge, an altar call and a call back home, back to the ground and the raw stuff of living. We all come from somewhere, from someone's, from somebody's. The lifeblood of generations who refuse to surrender their humanity in an inhumane world courses through my veins. Yes, me too, you as well. Grounded. Ground in the body and the history and the material from within this world, this common world, this inhumane world. Despair is transformed into hope, and how? Beginning anew this legacy of caring, onward and outward and inward. Yes, a legacy of caring, not one's own personal, isolated cares, spiraling, disconnected worries, right? But participation in the spirit of a thing, a legacy, a movement, a people to belong and become together. Now, I can't speak for all people, but I reckon the better part of folks want to belong somewhere with someone at some time. It is only natural. It's part of our material condition as primates to belong, because we rely on others. Others rely on us, and the legacy of caring, the economies of care, these are older than old, and they persist on still. To care, of course, is no small thing. Ask the people on the caring committee, especially lately. Like, hold the caring committee in your hearts, friends. They're doing righteous, righteous, righteous work. It is no small thing. To care is an internal appeal towards action. It's a knocking in the soul and the heart, in your gut, at the door, a calling. It's just something you gotta do. And you know that it's hard sometimes, especially in times like these. It's hard when everything is on fire. That do we not gather for what? To help one another believe more fully in life. All of us are uplifted and oppressed by the systems that surround us. Economics, institutions, accessibility, bigotry, privilege, assumptions, opinions. In this way and that way, one way or another, y'all, we are all affected by the circumstances of the world around us, its material conditions, our neighbor and our neighbor's material conditions, perhaps in subtle ways, perhaps in great ways. That word privilege, right? Surely we've explored what it means here before, likely, hopefully well before I arrived. One of my preferred ways to consider privilege comes from Andrea Gibson's poem, whose title contains the definition, "Privilege is not having to think about it. Simple, clean, a working approximation of an idea warranting deeper inquiry, sure, but that's basically it, right? I think that can work, not having to think about it." I remember reading a quote from some angry parent at a school board meeting, angry about trans people existing, and saying that we shouldn't have to think about this. Tough luck, right? We have to think about it, especially we who claim to be welcoming, especially we who claim that kind of righteousness. We do have to think about it, even when it's uncomfortable. But not having to think about it, out of experience, out of mind, I wonder if this is not the way our brains trick some of us into keeping on playing like we're the main character of the story. Like other people with particular needs or wants or someone else's problem. Yuck. What a sad place to find ourselves. And yet I know a past, less connected, more ignorant version of me resisted need a change when love called me. But in reflection, I find this less of a point of shame and more of an opportunity to be curious about my own resistance, finding encouragement in the fact that I have changed and will continue to do so in relationship with others. I'd like to think that in this world, in this time touched and torched by war, trauma, pain, tragedy, with it all on full display, we should be striving towards something better. We ought to allow ourselves to feel more deeply. We should think about it. We should think about it, even if it's uncomfortable. The places where discomfort raises its head are sometimes, oftentimes in my experience, the places where our hearts have the most room for growing, our compassion, room for expansion, love, an opportunity to be magnified. And I've shed quite a few tears coming across content from Gaza lately over people I don't know, that I'll never know, and likely now never could know. Buried beneath the reckless and abusive power, I consider the possible futures for trans folks in this country, people like me, especially younger trans folks and their families. And I have to catch myself from that ledge of despair, remember that while this is my private pain, I do not feel this alone, and neither do you. Neither do you. We participate in a legacy, a lineage of caring. I reckon it's important to feel that pinch of grief, y'all. To even feel that indignation and anger, not to stoke some hateful fire, but for the simple living hope that a saving faith in this age must be a faith of, by, and for the world, not disconnected from it, not damning this age for its damage. Forget your perfect offering, as Leonard Cohen would say. There is a crack in everything. This is how the light gets in. Even if it brings you to tears, y'all. Thinking about it, talking about it, feeling about it, and in what ways we can, doing something about it, that is an expression of care. That care that is bigger than us. The care that we belong to and which belongs to us in turn. That truth, wholly if anything ever were deserving of the title, that we need one another. We need folks who are different from us, carrying life experiences that differ from ours, people with different levels of ability, who speak different languages, who have different skin colors, use different pronouns, not to check off some bogus diversity, equity, and inclusion form, y'all, but because that is what beloved community looks like, feels like, sounds like, is like. It is all of us, all that is righteous and loving and real in a human life, with room enough to spare and a space preemptively designed to be radically inclusive, a space where everyone can be welcome with healthy boundaries and gentle hearts, where lions may rest with the lambs, a people ever adaptable to the changing needs of community, ever fueled by networks of mutual aid, common values of love, rooted in a deep and abiding care. I'm talking about that love that's bigger than you, Bigger than this building, bigger than Unitarian Universalism, than religion, than cultures and all the little dangerous power plays they make with innocent lives, even bigger than species, perhaps. Magnify that care, that love. Get real creative with what we might mean by care and love here, y'all. The mutual benefit of beings, harmony in relationships, something more from nothing but. Such a care might be overwhelming to consider. It might make us feel like we're being yanked towards all things, trying to be everything to everyone and all the time. And so we feel we have nothing left of ourselves. Compassion fatigue, extra crispy. This isn't the way. Maybe the possible avenues of care themselves are so overwhelming, the avenues to engagement inaccessible to potential seekers, and we begin to assume that there is nothing we can do, and we fall into that great big loneliness with our care warping into worry, ringing in our heads, keeping us awake. No, helplessness and hopelessness are often a trauma response. We feel like there's nothing else we can do. Tragic. This can't be the way either. Care and the magnification of love call us towards one another, face to face, heart to heart, to witness to each other's needs and to truly be on the side of love and become on the side of love, because the side of love calls for change. That care, though, that big care, is perfectly natural. It's not lost in the sky somewhere. It's natural and it's righteous, and for me it feels like the original practice, spiritual practice, to love one's neighbor. Now, surely this idea predates that call from Jesus, who named it as the highest commandment. To be ever in the process of expanding just who our neighbor is, as Reverend Jesse Jackson puts it. Everybody is somebody. I am somebody. Now, the call to care can be frustrating at times too, as if we don't know what to do with this mess of care that we found ourselves in, agitated, burnt out, empty, sad, in a distant kind of way, pressing it all down into a little ball in your chest and don't think about it, don't think about it. I reckon we've got to think about it, because it really is the little things that speak to how loving a space can be. Earlier, we asked folks to identify some of the ways that we're practicing P.R.I. here at Second Unitarian. Upstairs, gender-neutral bathrooms, pronouns, ramps, hybrid worship on Zoom. The list goes on, y'all. We'll have new ones, surely, before too long. Recently, our worship team, we talked about adding visual descriptions, brief little bits to give pertinent information about what's happening on screen or on the chancel for folks who need and like that info. And trust that we aren't bringing this practice to the church out of the blue or on our own, but in relationship with folks for whom this information is valuable, wanted, or needed. The journey goes on. The legacy continues as a river, not just a stone, a living thing, not a fixed destination. The big cares can gnaw at us in really heavy ways, but it's these everyday cares that so often seem to be the ones that keep us distant from one another. Concerns about appearances of uprightness, of being good and doing good. I reckon we've got some of that energy here. Nothing wrong with wanting to be good, authentic, compassionate, transformative people, though perhaps we ought to interrogate what we mean by goodness. Be curious, friends. Do we mean niceness, politeness? These have their place, sure, but do we mean justice? And do we mean equity? Do we mean that we are ready to greet the newcomer and say, we've been waiting for you? Now, it might sound a little creepy if someone comes in for the first time on our fantastic hospitality. Yeah, we've been waiting for you. So maybe not a literal approach. But what if we love this space into that spirit? We've been waiting. I know y'all can lean into that spirit. I know y'all did some real intentional work on welcoming trans folks to the space. It absolutely shows. It absolutely shows. I've talked to our friends in Oates who just love the welcome that you give them, while also knowing that there's room to grow, especially around things like non-binary pronouns. This is important. It is important, friends. Because what are we about here? Helping one another believe more fully in life. Imagine, unless you are non-binary or gender non-conforming, you know what this is like. But you go about your day and nobody gets it right. Nobody gets it right. And you know it's hard. So you maybe give people a pass and mercy, kindness, but no one gets it right. What if they came to a place and they find themselves in a place where people just get it right? Would that not help one feel, believe more fully in life? Would that not be authentic, compassionate, and transformative, honoring the authenticity of our neighbors, excuse me, our friends who are joining us, whose understanding of their self and their sense of gender identity isn't quite like yours? That's okay. Everyone's different. But we make those needed changes to draw the circle of care and concern wider. It is righteous. And you might be thinking, it's just words though. Yeah. But we are a linguistic species. We know ourselves in stories. We tell them all the time. When somebody says, this is who I am, we can't push that down, y'all. We ought to extend some of that trust to create a welcoming, radical hospitality. We don't have to always think alike to love alike. We don't always have to understand alike to create spaces that are truly, radically hospitable. We won't be perfect at it right the way either, y'all. This isn't a moral imperative, a test of like uprightness. This is a spiritual practice, a way of facilitating our communities that grows on and out from us into the future. We will never be done. The road to beloved community is not a place you get to. One day, we might arrive at a place that feels more like it than not, feels more like it, seems more like it, looks more like it, sounds more like it than where we've been. But we got to know that we're always still on the way. That can feel exhausting for a lot of people, right? But this is the journey. This is the spiritual practice. It is not the spiritual, I'm done, I'm going to sit on my hands while the world is calling for more love. Because everybody is somebody. Everybody is somebody. And I'll say that y'all are really good about this. Y'all really are. This place offers a radical welcome. This space feels more like a beloved community than a lot of UU churches I've been to. And we could always grow and grow more, to be ready. We've been waiting for you. Don't say that literally to strangers, like I said, but we have been waiting for you. We have been waiting. What if we build our spaces like we've been waiting? What if? I reckon it's doable, y'all. And I also reckon it's not just on worship team or just on the board. I think it's up to all of us and all the little ways that we are leaders to embrace this idea of preemptive radical inclusion. You know, we don't know who all comes in here, but we definitely also know that we are here. We are here. Sometimes we're going to get requests that are contradictory, right? That are contradictory. You know, some people really need a worship space that is more low-key and chill, and some people really like that we give hugs at the beginning of worship. We're going to get contrasting ideas. What do you do? How do you be everything to everyone all at once? You can't. You can't. That would be unkind to you and unfair to this institution. So we do the best that we can, working with the information that we have, expanding our parameters of love and working with other people to help them meet their needs. It is about relationship, conversation, righteous community building, not just to be good, but to be radically welcoming. And to know that that means it gets a little messy. We say connection, not perfection, right? Not even perfection in the ways that we can be connected sometimes, friends. We're gonna mess up our welcome once in a while. Someone here will probably misgender me again someday. It's not happened in a really long time, but it might happen again. And if that happens, you know, that's not the end of the world. So long as we can come back to the table and love again and start over. I have messed up pronouns before. It happens. And we come back to the table and start again and love. It's not about the perfect first move. It's not. It's not about falling all over ourselves when we make a mistake. It's about coming back. Dust yourself off. Back to the table. We're all learning to do better here, be better, expand our compassion ever wider, become more aware of the differences in our lives, the ways in which we ought to become more trauma-informed, the ways in which we can become more accessible, more emphatically anti-racist, more welcoming to LGBT people. Yes, you are welcome. And may each of us, in all the ways in our lives in which we are leaders, no matter how old, no matter how young, where you come from, what you look like, how you know yourself, we welcome you into this process, into this practice, into this legacy of caring, flowing on like a river, from the past struggles for righteousness to the future's uncertain bends, yet most certain that these words echoing through the water, through our bones, our very being, that everybody, you Included is somebody.